Can the World Cup make you money? Here's the answer. Introduction. Think about this. A country spends $50 billion for a 30-day event that comes once every 4 years. Building stadiums, constructing roads, opening hotels. And then what happens? The tournament ends. The teams fly away. The fans scatter. And that country looks back, asking, was it worth it? For some, the answer is yes. For others, this question became the beginning of an economic nightmare that lasted for decades. Today I'm going to tell you about the backstage of the World Cup. Not the football, the money. Not the goals, the billions. Not the champions, the winners and the losers.
Because the World Cup, long before it became the world's greatest sporting event, became one of the world's greatest financial operations.
And if you watch this video to the end, you'll never read World Cup news the same way again. Let's begin. FIFA's revenue machine. How did FIFA get so rich? FIFA, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, a non-profit organization registered in Geneva. But stop and think when I tell you this. The 2022 Qatar World Cup earned FIFA $7.5 billion in revenue, all on its own. We said it's non-profit, but its coffers are far from empty. So where does this money come from? First, broadcasting rights. Television channels from all over the world pay FIFA astronomical sums just to be able to broadcast the World Cup. Broadcasting revenue for a single tournament, approximately $3 billion. Why so much? Because the World Cup is a golden time slot for selling advertising, watched simultaneously by billions of people across the globe. For advertisers, these are the most valuable 30 days of the year. Second, sponsorships. Adidas, Coca-Cola, Visa, Qatar Airways, Hyundai. These brands pay hundreds of millions of dollars for the title of official sponsor of FIFA. Why? Because a logo that reads official sponsor of the FIFA World Cup means the chance to be seen by 5 billion people worldwide. No advertising budget can buy that on its own. Third, ticket revenue. At Qatar 2022, some tickets sold for more than $800. Final tickets changed hands on the black market for thousands of dollars. Total ticket revenue, approximately $800 million. So, FIFA collects $7 to $8 billion every 4 years simply by hosting a World Cup. Think of it like a company. You only sell a product once every 4 years. But every time you sell it, billions pour into the cash register. This model competes with some of the most profitable business models in the world. The host country equation. Hosting the World Cup, win or lose. Now we get to the real question. A country spends tens of billions of dollars to host the World Cup. But is it rational? Does the money really come back? The answer is far from simple, and history tells us very different stories. Example 1. Brazil 2014, disappointment. Brazil spent approximately $15 billion for the 2014 World Cup. 12 stadiums were built or renovated. Transportation infrastructure was renewed. But then what happened? The tournament ended, and the vast majority of those stadiums were left stranded in small towns far from major cities. The stadium in the middle of the Amazon rainforest in Manaus still can't cover its maintenance costs today. This situation is explained by one economic concept: white elephant syndrome. Structures that cost a fortune but cannot be used. And while Brazil was struggling with a budget deficit at the time, spending billions on stadiums triggered massive waves of public protest. The net economic contribution of the World Cup to Brazil's economy remains debated, but many analysts say the costs far exceeded the returns. Example 2. Qatar 2022. Small country, massive bill. Qatar's population is approximately 3 million. But the money it spent on the World Cup, $220 billion. That's a multiple of the total money spent across the entire history of the World Cup. So why did Qatar spend so much? Because for Qatar, this wasn't just a football tournament. It was a national branding investment. Qatar wanted to shed the image of a small, oil-rich country and become a global hub. A new airport, new metro lines, new hotels, new urban infrastructure. All of these were investments already planned to happen. The World Cup simply acted as a catalyst. Did this strategy work? According to many economists, Qatar will recover a significant portion of these investments in the long run. But $220 billion? Covering that figure could take decades. Example 3. South Korea and Japan, 2002, a success story. Not everything is bad. The World Cup jointly hosted by South Korea and Japan in 2002 is widely considered an economic success for both countries. Both nations modernized their infrastructure, boosted tourism revenues, and strengthened their international recognition. South Korea, in particular, reached the semi-finals during the tournament, and the positive atmosphere this created generated a significant economic boost both domestically and globally. Sponsors, brands, and the advertising wars. Why do brands spend millions without blinking? Now we move from in front of the camera to behind it. The real financial war of the World Cup isn't fought on the pitch, it's fought in boardrooms. Big numbers. Adidas pays hundreds of millions of dollars per cycle under its long-term partnership with FIFA. Coca-Cola has been a World Cup sponsor since 1978. That's an investment spanning decades. Why do they keep going? Because the math is clear. A brand spends serious budgets on a 30-second commercial that airs during the World Cup. But those 30 seconds air at a moment when 100 to 200 million people worldwide are in front of their screens. What other platform lets you reach that audience? Ambush marketing. And here, a very fascinating concept comes into play. Ambush marketing. Brands that are not official FIFA sponsors launch massive campaigns during the World Cup period. Without being an official sponsor, they capitalize on the atmosphere the World Cup creates. This is the nightmare of major sponsors. You pay millions to become an official sponsor, but a rival cleverly creates the same effect at zero cost. That's why FIFA bans even the logos of non-sponsor brands inside event venues. There have even been instances where spectators were prevented from entering stadiums wearing rival brand clothing. This isn't a football match. This is a market war. Player economics. And of course, there are the players. The World Cup directly impacts player valuations. If a player shines at the World Cup, their transfer fee explodes the following season. Kylian Mbappe became one of the most expensive players in Paris Saint-Germain's history after the 2018 World Cup. The World Cup is a massive window of financial opportunity, not just for clubs, but for individual players. The World Cup through an investor's eyes. What can you learn from the World Cup as an investor? Now we come to perhaps the most important section. All these figures, all these billions, what are they telling you? Lesson 1. Major events. Accelerate economies, but don't always sustain them. Mega events like the World Cup create short-term economic booms in host countries. The construction sector grows. Tourism explodes, employment rises. But the picture can look very different in the long run. If the spending goes toward one-use structures rather than sustainable infrastructure, the economic bill can be steep. The same applies to investing. Investors who can't see the difference between short-term excitement and long-term value always end up with regrets. Lesson 2. Brand value is a tangible asset. The deals FIFA makes with sponsors teach you something very important. Brand awareness carries real economic value. Coca-Cola's logo spends hundreds of millions just to be visible on World Cup pitches. Because they know, occupying minds shows up in the cash register. That's why in business and investing, people always ask, what is this company's brand value? It looks abstract, but its financial equivalent is very concrete. Lesson 3. A big spend doesn't mean big returns. Think about Qatar spending $220 billion and Brazil spending $15 billion. Whose investment was more rational? It's not the biggest number that wins. It's the one with the right strategy. It's the same in investing. You don't look for the highest figure, you look for the best ratio. What matters isn't how much you spent, it's how much you earned. Lesson 4. Cyclicality is everywhere. The World Cup comes every 4 years, and every time it arrives, a multi-billion-dollar economic cycle kicks off. Broadcasting rights are sold, sponsors step in, construction begins, tourism explodes, transfers inflate. There are cycles in financial markets too, periods of economic expansion and contraction, sectoral rises and falls. Those who can read the cycle are always one step ahead. Closing and call to action. Conclusion: who wins on the pitch and who wins in the bank. The World Cup is a unique moment when billions of people watch the same thing at the same time. But behind that moment, a massive economic machine runs, one that very few people ever see. FIFA collects billions every 4 years. Host countries spend enormous budgets. Some win, some lose. Brands pay staggering sums to get in front of millions of eyes. Players can reach the peak of their careers at this tournament. And all of this shows us one very simple but very powerful truth. Money doesn't just flow in bank accounts, it flows everywhere, even in a football match. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Every week, I break down the economic realities hidden inside everyday life, just like this. See you in the next video.